So, with digital housekeeping done, I will now introduce each of the 3 political representatives for 3 short interventions to help us set the scene for today's discussions. This event comes at a key point for the EU to address education inequalities that have been exacerbated by the pandemic. Interventions from these political allies across the 3 largest groups in the European Parliament is usually welcome today. So for our first intervention, I welcome MEP Antonio Lopez Istúriz White, Vice Chair of the Intergroup on Children's Rights from the European People's Party Spain, a long-standing partner of EuroChild, who has championed children's rights in the European Parliament. Unfortunately, Antonio can't be with us today, but he has sent us a video that we will now show you.
Dear friends from EuroChild and other partner organizations, thank you for the opportunity to share a few words during this webinar. This is a crucial time for the future of our children. Though the pandemic has affected all of us, it has been catastrophic for children. Among others, it has led to serious neglect of attention to diversity and special educational needs. Quality education should be at the forefront of our policies towards children. As you know, member states are designing their national plans as part of the long-awaited child guarantee proposed by the Commission earlier this year. As you will all probably discuss today, education must be a key part of these plans. This is an area where the European Union can be of added value. It can be a driving force for change by facilitating cooperation and exchange of best practices among member states. We have concrete examples of innovative plans in the EU countries where this has been done thoroughly and with great effect. Countries that are trying to overcome the devastating impact of COVID-19 on children's access to education and fair access to learning. For the child guarantee to be a success, member states must make sure that children have access to resources and services, including social and emotional training in their curriculum. We also need a lot more investment into teachers and school leaders. We need to empower and support them, no matter the context, whether it be children with disabilities or children affected by migration. Schools must be
dizabilități sau
accepting of diversity. Schools where children feel welcome, safe and appreciated result in better and motivated students. This is why school success cannot be measured only by dry figures and numbers. It should be measured by wider well-being indicators across the educational sector. Friends, I know we all remain committed to the well-being of children, inside and outside the classroom. These next months will be crucial for the rights of the child in the EU, with multiple new legislation and policies at EU level. I look forward to our work together and wish you all a successful event.
Thank you. I think you'll agree with me that was a very good start to our event already. So I'm going to now welcome MEP Victor Negrescu, apologies, from the Socialists and Democrats Romania, who previously supported the preparation of the Romanian presidency of the Council of the EU for 2019, which included preparations for the Bucharest Children Declaration, which promoted children's rights and in particular the right to participate as its key priority. Please take the screen, Mr. Negrescu.
First of all, I'm really happy to be here and to see so many people joining today's event. Of course, so many people from my country, Romania. So meaning that, of course, children's rights are an essential element for many Europeans and for many people from my country. So, of course, I think today's discussion is essential because, of course, we need to reinforce the need for Europe to act concretely when it comes to children's rights and when it comes to measures that help children across Europe have the same level of opportunities, but also make sure that all children can, of course, have access to education, to healthcare, to minimum social standards. So I think it's important, again, to mention all of that. And I think, of course, in your network, you are doing that very concretely. You are raising the visibility on those respective issues. You are trying to show that, of course, we can tackle in an efficient way those challenges by using, let's say, the expertise existing across Europe, the expertise existing in your member organization, the expertise existing in schools, the expertise existing in families, the expertise existing, of course, in different regions of Europe. So, of course, this is something that I want to reinforce in my intervention today, mentioning the fact that, of course, we need to be more bold at European level when it comes to tackling children's rights. And of course, the European Child Guarantee is a way of doing that. It's a concrete mechanism enabling us to act at national, local, and European level all together in making sure all children have access, again, to the basic needs. But it's not enough. We need to do more on that, and we need to make sure this child guarantee is properly being implemented across member states. And this is why the European Parliament, in the negotiation that we had with the Council and the Commission on the budget 2022, pressured for concrete measures and concrete actions from the European institutions in this regard. So what did we do, actually, and what we obtained? So first of all, we asked actually for more resources to be allocated to that, but we also asked in parallel for the Commission to do an extended assessment of the implementation of the child guarantee, to accelerate the process of the implementation of the child guarantee, and to identify, if needed, additional resources to be allocated for that if this would be needed. And we managed to introduce that, and I was, together with some of my colleagues, the initiators of this respective amendment, we managed to introduce that in the conclusions of the negotiations on the budget 2022. We have a common declaration of the Council, of the Parliament, of the Commission, stating that. So, of course, this is why I said initially that we need to be more bold and to move things forward, because I believe this should be the case for a lot of EU programs where we have to have this dimension related to future generation. And this is why I believe, and we should, of course, be very loud about it, in saying that also the recovery plans should have a dimension associated, again, with children, with children's rights, children opportunities. So I think this is something that I want to say right now by mentioning that, of course, the projects in which you have been involved are very important for us from the European Parliament side, because you manage, of course, to show that concrete things can happen, but in the same time, you bring people from all over Europe in engaging in common activities, and in the same time, you know, in your different projects, this is what I noticed, and this is a good thing, you are coming up with clear proposals for policymakers to follow through. And this is the case also in today's meeting and in the project that you have implemented. So, of course, I want to urge you in doing that, in continue to doing that, but also into doing that in a more prominent way. I think you have the support of many members of the European Parliament, and I see some of my colleagues also joining today's event. And even those that couldn't join, I know there are many, of course, actually supporting EuroChild and your activities. I want to say that, of course, for me, it's important in the near future, of course, to try to identify all the elements that can improve children's life. This is a 360-degree approach, implying that, of course, we need to act at different levels. And I think this is something that needs to be explained sometimes better, even at European level. That is not enough to tackle one of the challenges. We need to tackle all the challenges in the same time in a coherent approach, but also in an approach that correlates all those different actions. So, of course, if we intervene in education, this is good, but we also have to intervene in healthcare. If we intervene in healthcare, we should not forget that some children have difficulties in getting access to basic food. In the same time, we have children that want to do more and they want to develop new digital skills, that want to, of course, why not even develop new initiatives on different topics, on environmental issues, on artificial intelligence, and so forth. So we have, of course, to understand the complexity of this issue, the difficulty of drafting policy in the field, the difficulties of implementing policy in the field, and the need for concrete expertise when dealing and implementing such policies in action. And this will be the last element of my intervention, my initial intervention, is that I want to praise those people like you that are involved daily in helping children in different domains, in different fields. I think this is a difficult task. I think we should invest more in skilling such experts. I think we should involve them more when drafting policies. And of course, I think we should listen to them when discussing such topics, like I hope to do today, of course, listening to all of you, because I think it's an essential part of the future of European policies when it comes to children, to involve you and to listen to you. And of course, in the same time, and I cannot not mention that, involving children as well, because I think this is also something that should not be ignored. This is mentioned in the Charter for Fundamental Rights, that children from Europe can and should express themselves, should present their position, but I also, this is why I want to mention that as well. So thank you again for having me part of this conference today. And of course, I will be listening to all the interventions, and if needed, I will intervene, interact with everyone, and hopefully we'll have an interesting debate with concrete outcomes. So thank you again, all of you, for joining, and especially EuroChild for doing this and for the great work they have been doing for many years already. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Negrescu. And for those words, you have over 400 people working with children directly online with you today. So I think it's good to hear that you're praising their work as well, and that you'll be listening to some of their voices today, and maybe some questions and comments in the chat. So we appreciate that. So I'd now like to welcome MEP Ilana Sicorel from the Renew Europe Party, France, a member of the Culture and Education Committee in the European Parliament, where she is actively campaigning for a more inclusive and accessible approach to key education policies being developed by the EU in the coming years, including the European education area. So please take the screen, Mr. Sicorel.
Dear Mrs. Denel, dear colleagues and dear participants, I want first of all to thank EuroChild for this invitation. And I want to congratulate you all for the very important action that you are undertaking. I am very happy to be here today with you in this symbolic moment during the European Disability Employment Week and ahead of World Children's Day. The pandemic is raising awareness on structural and common issues faced by education systems across Europe, such as the lack of access to internet for vulnerable children, or the difficulties faced by children with particular needs. Children are often at the forefront. Actually, we are living a great momentum for education in Europe. For the first time in history, the European Union decided to propose a holistic approach to education and training. This through the implementation of a genuine European education area by 2025, to make its supportive action more visible and accessible. Education tends now to be perceived as a real strategic challenge. One of the key dimensions of that ambition is ensuring quality, inclusive and accessible education for all. Education, social and emotional well-being of the most vulnerable groups and children is an urgent priority that deserves a European approach. And recently, progress has been made in that direction with the adoption of the European Parliament report on the European education area, for which I have been Renew Europe rapporteur. And let me insist on the advances that were particularly close to my heart. We consider education as an investment, not as an expenditure. And we want to make Europe an educational power by truly benefiting from the exchange of pedagogical best practices, inspiring ourselves from the richness of our diversity, and developing a true commitment and educational culture at a European level. We urge to consider connectivity and the access to digital infrastructure as a right derived from the fundamental right to education. That is, children access to a computer, an affordable subscription, and most of all, a quality network. For the first time, and let me insist on vocabulary, we place the learner at the center of the process by encouraging a tailored approach towards children with any kind of disability, and also, and the words are important there, learning or thinking differences, such as those on the autism spectrum or with high potential. I draw your attention to the proposal for 25 Erasmus Plus Teachers Academies by 2025, with a budget of 1.5 million euros for each one. We need to realize that these Teachers Academies are a real revolution. Academies are in fact communities of stakeholders, networks or training centers, on teachers or association around a certain theme of concern and the exchange of educational best practices. I hope that as many as possible teacher academies will deal with the inclusion of children in vulnerable situations. I appeal thus to you, actors in this field, to seize this opportunity. You have to know that 10 selected teachers academies out of the 50 submitted projects in September will be made public early in 2022 under the French presidency of the European Union. And the next call, this is very important, for proposals will be launched in September 2022. And finally, we will only overcome educational and social inequalities still too often linked to destiny, if our whole society commits in solidarity. Not everything can come from public authorities, and we must favor spaces and communities of civic engagement. In the European Education Area reports, we promote the practice of mentoring and ask for the recognition of soft skills, those that each of us acquires during a commitment in solidarity. Recognizing soft skills in terms of employability, integrating them into school curricula, and stimulating them as of early childhood are in fact the challenges of tomorrow. I thank you again for your invitation and your attention, and I wish you a very good webinar. I will be with you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Sikirel. That is really helpful in regards to the further information that you provided everyone here on this webinar. And I'm sure that as soon as we find further information on the details that you've just explained, we'll share them with everyone here as well. So thank you, very exciting. And thank you to both our speakers and also MEP White for the video as well. This is a really great start to the webinar. You've got us off to a great start. So now I am going to take us into section 2 of the event, and I'd like to introduce Chris Gittings, who is the director of the Northampton Centre for Learning Behaviour at the University of Northampton and coordinator of the ICAM programme. Chris will now provide an example of a practical solution on how to rebuild children's social and emotional well-being in school. So over to you, Chris.
Thank you. Last week, the eyes of the world were on the COP26 climate conference in Glasgow, struggling to agree a solution to devastating climate change. For 10 days, our attention was drawn away from the global issues that is upsetting our lives, reducing the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. And there are so many parallel messages in the two crises. Inaction on global warming will impact most severely on disadvantaged communities. And unless we take action now, the education of disadvantaged children will suffer disproportionately from the effects of separation that the pandemic is causing. But we have an advantage. The damage to the education of children in need caused by the pandemic comes at a time when the European Union has this major initiative to address the inequalities caused by poverty through the European Child Guarantee. It's Europe's COP26 opportunity for children, I believe. As Antonio Lopez Isturiz White said in his inspiring introduction, along with our other European parliamentarians, it's about the potential of the Child Guarantee. And he said, these next few months will be crucial for the rights of the child. Another parallel we have with change in the climate is that we have scientific evidence to inform action needed and solutions that will have a lasting effect. Science tells us that why children cannot learn unless they feel comfortable and motivated, and unless they first form relationships for learning, and we form those relationships with them. So if during the pandemic relationships have been fractured and well-being has been damaged, relationships because of their more severe fracture in relationships for learning and for finding restoration to their well-being. So simply providing extra or more varied online learning or extra catch-up lessons or IT equipment or whatever on returning to school is not a solution to restoring education and equality. It'll leave disadvantaged children further behind. They need to be nurtured in surroundings where they feel included, happy, and receptive to learning. And they need specific targeted support to both repair and continue the development of their social and emotional well-being. And they need the support of their parents working in partnership with their schools. The good news is that interventions that create this harmonious school environment and provide support for social and emotional well-being are available, and they are tried and they're tested. One such intervention is the Including Children Affected by Migration program, which has been developed and implemented over the past 3 years
programul pe care a fost dezvoltat alături de
by teams in the UK, Spain, Italy, and Romania. Furthermore, the UK partners have developed, the ICAM partners, have developed training programs and processes for getting the program into schools by establishing it in all schools in a city, county, or this is happening now in Romania, in the UK. So we offer the experience of the ICAM program as an example of a practical solution to the damage caused by separation during the pandemic, and it could be applied to all disadvantaged children to fulfill their child rights and their child guarantee at this critical time. So we now have a short video which outlines this solution.
By the disadvantaged children damaged by the pandemic, closing the education gap. Social and emotional well-being is at the heart of educational recovery. The well-being of disadvantaged children has been badly damaged by separation during the COVID pandemic. Brain science proves that without social and emotional well-being, children are unable to learn. Consequently, the education gap is widening for disadvantaged children. Their child rights guarantee will be denied, and catch-up programmes will be ineffective without improvements to the social and emotional well-being of all children, and particularly those most in need. Unhappy children cannot learn. Well-established programmes are available to help schools implement good practice in social and emotional learning and whole school strategies for well-being. These programmes are highly cost-effective. The OECD identifies improved life skills resulting from social and emotional learning for all children as a key driver for economic growth, both in terms of adult productivity and in reduced social welfare and criminal justice. Is the concept of convivencia, a Spanish word meaning living together in heartfelt harmony. This programme can improve the inclusion of all children by enhancing the climate of convivencia in school and at home, by providing additional support in school and in the family for their social and emotional well-being, and by raising awareness about children's rights and the law protecting them. Developing social and emotional well-being is not an option, it is a fundamental right of the child. The programme achieves this through the professional development of school ICAM leaders who help their school staff to restore learning relationships for all children in need. Because it is designed to help children affected by migration overcome social and emotional disadvantages resulting from the separation trauma and loss they have suffered, it works equally well for all children suffering as a result of the pandemic. ICAM encourages children to take on leadership roles, helping each other as equal partners in their school. Another feature is the integration of parent-carer education with the school-based programme in order to provide additional support for those and to encourage ongoing social and emotional well-being for the whole family in the home. Taking action is not an option, it is an absolute necessity. Unhappy children cannot learn. Unless disadvantaged children have their social and emotional needs met in order to restore damaged relationships for learning and comfort in school, they will continue to be excluded from the education which is their inalienable right under the UN Convention. The ICAM programme will help rebuild the learning relationships fractured by the COVID pandemic. Schools who have incorporated and developed the ICAM programme find that it soon benefits everyone in the school community. We welcome you to the ICAM programme. Convivencia.
Colleagues, these are the contact for you to make other sections that you've got those addresses. And now, following the pandemic, it is such that it is very, very important, therefore, that people realize that that is something which is a real advantage to you. You actually realize what every child needs in these circumstances. So we're now moving on to consider the next section, which is to think about some of the challenges for including migrant children and how they may have messages for the inclusion of all disadvantaged children. And it's my pleasure to introduce two colleagues from Save the Children Italy and the Horizon 2020 Immerse project, which is mapping the integration of refugee and migrant children in Europe. Silvia Taviani is Policy and Law Programme Coordinator and Project Coordinator of the Horizon 2020 Immerse project. And Valeria Fabretti is Research Consultant and Principal Investigator for the 2020 Immerse project and for Save the Children in Italy. So over to you, Silvia.
Thank you, Christopher. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak to each other and to present the results of this project, Horizon 2020 Immerse. First of all, I just would like to introduce our section just to say that it's a huge problem, the access to education for all. And like Save the Children, we deeply understood the collective problem of access to education of minors also in Italy. And we did a lot of research and report during the pandemic and also in 2021 about educational poverty, digital poverty, and the increasing of the school living. But today we would like to focus our brief intervention about the minors with migration background and giving a sort of scenario thanks to this Horizon project. And just to say a few words, the Horizon 2020 project in MERS is a 40-year project started at the end of 2018, and it's in Italy, Spain, Greece, Ireland, Belgium, and Germany. The aim of the project is to try to map the integration of refugee and migrant children in Europe. So we did a sort of co-creation, earning the voice of children, family, teachers, but also policymakers and institutions in these countries in order to collect qualitative data and co-create a sort of dashboard to
Sylvia?
Yes.
Sorry, we're having a few problems hearing you. I don't know whether there is, if you could maybe speak a little bit closer to the microphone or if you've got any headphones that's close by, but sorry to interrupt.
No worry at all. Thank you, Hallie. And here is better? Okay.
Yes, that's good. Thank you.
Sorry, just to say some few words and giving the floor to my colleagues, Valeria, and say that this is a very, very important project that we are facing now, and we are in the middle of the field of the research project, and with the aim also to collect new set of data and also to present policy recommendation to educators, but also policymakers also at the European level. So Valeria, you can try to find more in that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. Good morning, and thank you also by my part for this invitation. It's a great opportunity for us to share information about our work in the IMMERS project. As Sylvia was saying, one of the
Spunea și Silvia, unul dintre obiectivele proiectului sau obiectul principal al proiectului este dezvoltarea unor noi metode de a studia incluziunea copiilor migranți, în special incluziunea educației.
We'll present you today briefly this side of the project, this effort that is undertaking in the diverse teams are undertaking in this period, especially moving from the creation in the previous months of the project of a dashboard of indicators. It has been developed using a co-creation method, which includes the voice of migrant and refugee children, their families, educators, and NGOs, and policymakers. So we have realized qualitative research activities with these targets to grasp their direct experiences in order to identify multiple dimensions of integration. The aims of this tool, the dashboard, is to unify criteria in the collection of data when studying migrant children integration and inclusion in Europe. So the final dashboard has a total of 30 indicators, which refers to these 11 areas represented in the graphics. And they have in integration outcomes or results and determinants to be intended as barriers or facilitators of integration results. And the indicators related to these areas have been explored in further qualitative research activities and will be covered by secondary data and will be the subject of a large-scale quantitative data collection that is taking place in this month in all the countries involved and that reach migrant children and young people, their family, teachers, school principals through different questionnaires. But before going into detail on some of the results that at this stage are deriving from the qualitative, mainly qualitative activity, research activity concerning these different dimensions, let me just give you, share some points on the Italian context in particular. Starting from the 90s, Italy has adopted an inclusive model, strongly inspired by the constitutional right of an open and free education for all. But despite this pioneering line, inequalities and weaknesses of migrant children's school careers and paths persist. We are talking about the 10% of students' overall population. And to give you some more elements about students with migrant backgrounds in Italy, we can say that recent data confirm the trend regarding the growth of foreign minors born in Italy, accounting for more than the 60% of the total. In terms of school careers of migrant children and students, the main and persistent issues, even if some improvements are detected by very recent data, the main issues are delays in the access to the school system, the concentration in the vocational and technical tracks of the upper secondary school, and a high degree of school delay and early school leaving compared to the Italian students. It is sufficient to say that if overall early school leaving rate is about 13% in Italy, very high rate, the level is more than double for migrant students compared to the Italian one. And it should be noted also that all these issues regard migrant students born abroad more than those born in Italy. Concerning unaccompanied migrant minors that are also target of our study, we are talking about more than 9,000 currently counted on the Italian territory. A new and promising law on their protection was approved in 2017, which was also promoted by Save the Children in Italy. And it is important to monitor now its outcomes with respect to the right of education for unaccompanied minors, also considering that in Italy there is no systematic monitoring of data concerning their schooling. Finally, despite we don't have still certain data, our predictions at Save the Children, based on many insights coming from our services, and also other studies in Italy that propose estimates indicate that the impacts of the pandemic on these fragile migrant children's pathways to inclusion will be particularly harsh, considering that migrant children and their families can count on a reduced set of economic, social, and cultural resources to handle with the consequences of the COVID-related restriction in education. So we talk about learning loss, we talk about educational poverty as factors that affect migrant children more than the Italian peers.
Valeria, if you could just finish off for me, please. Thank you.
Yeah, very quickly. These are some of the results coming from the qualitative research activities done so far. While that will be then integrated by the data coming from the questionnaires in the following months. But this is just to briefly highlight with you that we have in the upper part of the dashboard some contextual features that afflict the condition of migrant children as a result, explained in the lower part of the dashboard. Among the first, there are aspects such as bureaucracy and obstacles in public administration, the fragmentation of services and policies that make access to rights difficult for many migrant families, and discrepancies among schools.
Cele din școli și, în general, o implementare limitată a abordării multiculturale și a multilingvismului din cauza lipsei de
resistance by the part of the teachers, I would say also the principals, in implementing fully a real intercultural approach. As Silvia was saying, we are also particularly attentive to the strong territorial inequalities in Italy at the level of also extra-scholastic educational offer, was lacking, especially in the suburbs of the big cities, generates high thresholds of migrant children educational poverty. Among the seconds, and I close, we like to emphasize that there are critical issues resulting not only from structural factors, but also to cultural factors. This is the case, for example, of school choice orientation based on teachers' biased representation that can in turn affect children motivation to school achievement. This is the case of the limited sense of belonging to the context of residence found in many migrant adolescents, and also as an effect of the perceived social hostility. So I stop here just to hoping we will have an opportunity to discuss further our results and the need to work on these different lines, also in terms of policy advising and education. Thank you.
Valeria, thank you, and Sylvia, thank you so much. It's really valuable to know that what we're talking about here is being underpinned by careful and accurate research, which will remove any doubt that people might have that these children are being more severely affected by the pandemic, and also that they are already suffering disadvantage in so many ways as they try to settle into their society. Thank you so much. I'm sure that will be really well taken by our politicians when they're looking to see what the focus for the child guarantee should be. So we're going to hear a little bit more now about the ICAM program and how it actually works in Romania in support of the Child Rights Guarantee to address the issues we've been hearing about. And it's my great pleasure to introduce Laura Savaghica, who is the Deputy Director of TERDEZOM Romania, and Aurel Grau from the Schools Inspectorate in Prahova. Laura and Aurel have deep experience of partnerships in Romania directly implementing the ICAM program in support of large numbers of children left behind by parents migrating to work, and how it contributes to the application of the child guarantee in real practice. Over to you, Laura.
Thank you very much, Chris, and hi to all the participants. Indeed, it's very well known that the impact of the pandemic is deeply felt by the education systems. And we've seen that the rapid need for digitalization, the challenges of creating a new curriculum adapted to online teaching, the negative psychosocial impact felt by children, with impact which is generated by isolation, anxiety, insecurity, the increase in school dropout rates. All these are some of the realities faced by the Romanian education system. And of all the countries in Europe, students in Romania have had the longest period of isolation from the school due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Practically, the physical attendance at school was almost non-existent for the most part of the 2020-2021 school year. And some of the statistics mention that 47% of the children used only their mobile phone in order to attend the online classes. while 54% of the children admit that the biggest risk that they were exposed to during this period was the internet addiction. They spent a lot of time on the internet. After that, children also recognized that they had access to a lot of false information, and they were exposed to online bullying. Also, some of the statistics regarding Romania estimate that around 250,000 children to 1,800,000 children, according to Save the Children, they were not using any other electronic devices except their mobile phones. And this was in some cases put at their disposal by their families. And this was a real impediment for most of the children to participate because they didn't have access to this type of devices. One of the measures that was put in place by the Ministry of Education was the provision of this type of devices. But even though they were distributed in some very vulnerable communities, the children and their parents didn't know how to use them. So the pandemic has deeply affected the education and worsened the existing social inequalities. Children from low-income families, children living in rural areas, children from ethnic and linguistic minorities, children with disabilities, migrant and refugee children, children and young people who were attending different educational institutions, they really face significant barriers to participation in education and learning. And they had fewer education and social advantages than the other peers. Besides the fact that they didn't know exactly how to use the devices, they also lacked the internet. The quality of the courses and their attention was also affected. Some of the studies that were done by also other organizations mentioned the fact that there was no internet connection in 1 in 4 rural schools, and this is really sad. Schools are not just a place for academic education, but also a place where children have access to learning, social and emotional skills, interaction, and social support. And the closure of schools has not only disrupted the education process for children, but also the access to school meals, to welfare support, and to the interaction, the everyday interaction with their colleagues.
Laura, can I just ask you to start wrapping up, please?
Yes, just 2-3 minutes. Based on all these conclusions that were acknowledged by the rapid assessment on the situation of children and their families, which was done by UNICEF in collaboration also with Teresome and other organizations, we observed that there is a need for certain recommendations, like providing targeted support through funds and programs, by building schools' capacity, guiding and training school principals and teachers to ensure accessible, qualitative, and inclusive education for children left behind, for migrant children, asylum seekers, and beneficiaries of international protection. Develop programs in order to build digital skills or to offer inclusive alternative to the educational process. Offer integrated support to children and their parents through school-based psychological counseling and after-school programs. Providing targeted training programs on diversity, intercultural teaching, and language development to school principals and teachers. Schools should be provided with an assessment tool for better understanding their potential for improvements, a training program for enhancing teachers' empathy, as well as various materials for parents and relatives, raising awareness about children's rights and law protecting them, and providing additional support in school and the family for the social and emotional learning and general well-being. And also, not least important, establish connections between refugee and migrant children and young Romanian children in order to use innovative mentoring methodologies. Through our programs, we already countered stereotypes and we fostered acceptance by raising awareness on children's rights, the difficulties of migrants, and cultural and human richness that they bring to host countries. Thank you.
Well, I will take the floor from Laura. Thank you very much, Laura, for this nice, very nice presentation. Hello, everybody. I'm very delighted. I'm delighted to be here with all of you. But I will take the advantage of the interpreters, and I will continue my speech in Romanian because we have so many people from my country. So I think they will be very well enchanted by what I will say in Romanian. Deci îmi permit să vorbesc în românește pentru că beneficiez de...
So, as I said, as we have interpretation, I'll continue in Romanian. I'd like to thank you very much for this numerous attendance. Everything that has been shared so far is part of the ICAMnet program. Obviously including children affected by migration. This project started many years ago, but as far as I know, it's one of the few programs that reached the maturity phase. It went through different stages, but here we are today talking about the implementation of the program itself. I represent the Prahova School Inspectorate within the program, and obviously I deal with everything related to this program in our county. Some years ago, our endeavors also included the disadvantaged children in our county, and out of different reasons, these children could not learn. Therefore, we sought solutions to improve that situation. And this is how we became partners in the first ICAM project that was acting anti-bullying. Back then, we were very interested in the bullying phenomena that was becoming more and more present in our schools. And as we joined this program, we discovered a wonderful team, the partners that you can see in this webinar, and together we identify solutions. Therefore, I would like to walk you through the solutions that we identified together. When we talk about children affected by migration, maybe you all might wonder why Romania, and why is Romania partnering in such a program talking about migration children, because we don't have that many children coming from migration, because in Romania, maybe this is a rather low number. I think we have only 4,000 such migrating children. But what we do have are children left behind by parents that left abroad to work. So these children are either left behind by both parents or by at least one parent, and they were left at home in a difficult condition, I would say. To cut a long story short, I want to share with you that from the beginning, we fully got involved in the activities, and we did the following. First of all, we wanted solutions that could be implemented immediately. Secondly, we needed something that did not involve extra costs for the school. Thirdly, we wanted something efficient. In our point of view, the project that is being rolled out now fulfills all the conditions. And why am I saying this? We started from what Chris said earlier. He said that one thing which is paramount: an unhappy child is a child that cannot possibly learn. And for us, what was essential was to nurture and create an environment that facilitates learning. And what is that environment that facilitates learning? That we used convivencia, the word that means living together in harmony. Convivencia is a goal, an ideal for us, but not impossible to attain. What we want to do in order to reach convivencia are things that are available at a practical level in all schools. We included 12 essential areas identified by the school, and if properly tackled, can indeed help the school to implement the concept of convivencia that we've been mentioning. In an environment dominated by convivencia, bullying cannot be expanded or developed. In the first ICAM project, we of course try to have some mini pilot projects in several schools. 3 schools in the rural area, a vocational high school in the city, 4 schools in the city, covering a very varied sphere of children, giving us an overall picture of our actions. So during the piloting phase, what did we do exactly? We wanted to identify ICAM leaders. ICAM leaders in the piloted schools. These are people that are highly respected in their schools and are also taken into account whenever they share something with their colleagues. These leaders first attended the training. We had teams of 4 going to schools and helping their colleagues roll out activities. During this project, we also identified what are the aspects that influence children's behavior. For instance, we never actually realize.
Can I ask you to start finishing off, please?
Yes, of course. 1 minute. Thank you. So
1 minute, please, to finish. So we try to identify the leaders. Then the leaders develop training programs with their peers, telling them about how important it is to perceive the children as people themselves with their own needs. We then developed a self-assessment tool that, based on the 12 key areas, enabled us to identify the weaknesses from the children, parents, and teachers' perspective. Then, all together with the children, an action plan was developed in order to improve the weaknesses or the negative aspects that had not been even acknowledged before. And periodically, they have to go back to the self-assessment and improve the overall atmosphere. Now, I want to tell you that we started again the entire cycle. We have 20 trainers already trained. They are to work with 80 people in our county, and together they will do their best in order for convivencia to be garnered in these schools. And in the medium and long run, our intention is to promote similar actions throughout the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to our speakers, and I apologize for interrupting. I'm not doing very well at this timing for this event, and one of the reasons is there's so much information, there's so much to share across this whole project and across this whole event. So I apologize for not keeping to time, but we're going to carry on very quickly on to the next section. So thank you to the speakers. We've just heard of barriers and challenges, but we've also heard a lot of solutions, which I think is really important for us all to hear and realize that there are things that can be done to support children within schools at this time. So I'd like to turn to another national example, and this is Spain, to look at solutions and efforts to address educational inequality in schools. So we're now going to hear from Antonio Casquero, teacher from Colegio de San Antonio, Madrid, on how the ICAM program is improving well-being and inclusion in school. Antonio presented in our last webinar in May, and it received some great feedback about his work. So it's a great pleasure to have him here again. So over to you, Antonio.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm very pleased to be here in this special event, and thanks for trusting me once again.
Mulțumesc că mi acordați încredere.
I'd like to share with you my everyday practice, and time is short, so let's begin. Okay. Well, first of all, I'd like to share, to introduce my school. We are a small school with children from 20 different countries in Madrid, in a working class neighborhood, socially, economically, and culturally deprived. Most of them come from families with a high risk of social exclusion, unemployment, and structured and functional illiteracy. What did we find when we began this last year? Well, we found pupils with a lack of affection, lack of language experience, most of them from Philippines, but you felt the other children from South America whose parents speak Spanish weren't able to speak as fluently as they used to in comparison to the preceding period, pre-COVID. And some of them with fears that they didn't have before, because they remain alone for a long time in their own families and they don't receive too much affection. On the other hand, they were also very excited and keen on the new beginning. What did we do to restore their well-being? First of all, we changed our slogan, "Keep in our house," a way to say that we are going to take care of everyone, and to say, don't worry, you are safe. We have implemented a government project from Comunidad de Madrid called Educar para Ser, Learning to Be, where they learn social and emotional skills and provide them and their families tools to improve disabilities. We also use some ICAM programs, advices, ideas, and support. And to recover places without fears and providing them the feelings of belonging in a group, we program outdoor activities and special games in the playground. We read and worked the Emotionary, a book with 42 free activities to download to express what you feel. You can find the book in Spanish and English, but the activities are only in Spanish. It's really a good book to work with. And furthermore, we have tried to increase the motivation and improve their feelings of convivencia in the classroom with game dynamics. And let me show you some of them. This is my beautiful classroom and my pupils. Lockdown Diary. It's an activity in which we try to understand what we feel and what we learn in the lockdown, asking them from different items, but we can use the activity for learning their own emotions. Today, I remember you. It's a mailbox in the classroom where they send posts to give thanks to other mates or teachers or parents for whatever they want. and they recognize how their classmates work, feel, or help each other. My feelings, it's they have to identify how they feel throughout the day. They put a color sticker that is connected with what they feel throughout the day. Happy is yellow, sad is blue, it doesn't matter. And as you can watch, Calvin was angry before lessons and during lessons, happy before playground, and again angry after playground, because maybe he wanted to go back to the classroom. They learn to identify what they feel, and we record that feeling. And here we can see lockdown diary, and the activity in which we can tell 2 things I've learned, 2 things I did for the first time, 2 things which I help others with, 2 things I've achieved, 2 things I'd like to do when all this finishes, and then their own feelings. Think when you felt like that: happy, sad, worried, funny, excited, scared, at home. These days, it was thought by the lockdown, but it doesn't matter. And finally, what I call amusements, activities where they have to do a video singing, dancing, showing their feelings for pupils in quarantine after a positive test for COVID. And if we have time, we can watch 1 or 2 videos. In the first one, she has told me a twister tongue.
Hola, Papá Antonio, te voy a decir una trabalenguas. Pablito clavó un clavito. ¿Qué clavito clavó, Pablito?
A poem.
Ahora te voy a recitar este poema. 2 ositos de la nieve no se pueden resbalar. 2 amores que se quieren no se pueden olvidar.
And a joke.
Y por último te voy a contar un chiste. ¿Cómo se dice pelo sucio en chino? Chin champú. Ay, no.
Well, in the second one, we can see we wish Camila a happy birthday because she was at home for a positive test of COVID. Okay, and that's all. As an also, yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead, Antonio.
Okay. As an old song said, how high can they fly with broken wings? I hope with our effort, all children feel included, loved, and cared for. thanks everybody. Thanks for having me a part of this. And it was a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Antonio. It's always a pleasure to hear about your work, but also see it as well. You do give us very concrete evidence of the impact that your work has when we see and hear from the children. So thank you again for joining us today. So I am now going on to move on to our next speaker. We will now hear from the leading children's rights advocates in Spain, Carles Lopez, the president of Plataforma de Infancia. They are EuroChild's national partner network in Spain and a member of EuroChild's Child Guarantee Task Force, which aims to influence the development, implementation and monitoring of the national action plans. So please take the screen, Carles.
Okay, thanks. Good evening to everybody. Really, first of all, I need to apologize to me for my level of English that is not so good, but I will try to do my best with it. And I have to say that I feel really comfortable because now I'm president of the national platform of Plataforma Infancia in Spain. But a few years ago, I was president of a school students union in a school. So educational topics, I feel very comfortable, and I grow in the child participation process. So I think that it's very beautiful, the opportunity to speak here in a very high level audience. So if I can speak very little from an anecdote, the truth is that when I was at my school students union, our first project is called Convivencia. It's called Convivencia. So really, I feel that it's a very good word to explain all these projects that you have explained here today about these projects and this aim to improve children's life. So the aim of my presentation today that will be so short, and I know that we have very few time because we have a lot of interesting topics. I will share a presentation. The aim of my presentation is to explain for a little the work of Plataforma Infancia in advocacy during the pandemic year. So I don't know if you can see my presentation.
No, I can't see it yet, Carles.
Okay, I will try it. Another time. So no problem. I will do it without presentation. I don't need it. So I will do it without presentation, and later I will send you the presentation so you can find all of the. Oh, thanks. I show that the team has shared for me for my skills on technology skills are so strange. So thanks to the team that shared my presentation. And in this, I want to explain the efforts on advocacy that we have done in education equality with our project Cole Seguro. Cole Seguro is a project that went, well, I can skip these first slides that are about the situation in the educational system in Spain. We can skip these slides. So what I want to tell you is that in Spain, as other countries in Europe, the schools are closed from one day to another. And the state and the regions spent a lot of money in order to have the recovery of the schools. So here in Plataforma España de Infancia in Spain wants to know how this money has been spent and maybe do advocacy with this data. And in order to maybe open the lights of the closed schools, we do this report. It's a report that analyzes the main budget areas of the extra budgets in education during the COVID time. And it's interesting because we use the report not only in order to make more transparent all these budgets that are 300 million. It's a lot of money, but in order to do advocacy in our own objective. So we have maybe a double objective to advocacy and the transparency. And I think that it's interesting that both objectives are in order to be accomplished. So I will present you 5 main results of the 5 key points of the Studio Cole Seguro related to inequality. The first of them is extracurricular activities. In the survey, Cole Seguro shows that 81% of the schools in Spain extracurricular activities have been reduced or completely suppressed. 1 of every 2 schools across the country will abolish extracurricular activities during the 2020 school year. So for us, extracurricular activities are a good way to fight against inequality in education. So we think that as the schools has been opened during the last years, we need to recover extracurricular activities. The second point that I want to explain you about this topic is mental health. Although social emotional support measures have received attention of educational administrations, the report has showed that no evidence of budget was found regarding the implementation of these measures. So we all know that mental health is a problem that is on the agenda today, and it's necessary to be on the agenda, but no evidence of budget was found regarding the implementation to mental health measures. So we think that we need to not only to put the tema on the agenda, also to put money on the policies about this topic. It's interesting to say that 4 out of 5 households consider that the measures that have been taken can negatively impact on children's mental health and emotional well-being. So really mental health is a problem on the schools today, and I'm happy to listen during the whole presentation about the topic. The third topic that we have worked at the Cole Seguro report is digitalization in education. The perception of the quality of digital education has improved from the first quarter to the end of the academic year, coinciding with the rollout of the implementation of the funding programs intent. In the first quarter, only 49% of families said that the digital education in their school was good, but in the end of the course, the school year was 50%, 56%. And the last 2 topics that I want to tell you about the Cole Seguro report was educational equity. It's interesting. The results in educational equity was so interesting because we see very greatest disparity in the prioritization of spending with the different territories. On average, spending has been allocated primarily from the canteen services to cover the special needs of service and to cover the special needs of preschools. I don't speak about, but the first years of education are one of the main topics of advocacy of the Plataforma Infancia here in Spain. The 0 to 3 years education are one of the main objectives of our advocacy work. So we have different programs in order to do advocacy in these topics. The data from Cole Seguro shows that 30% of the schools in Spain have indicated that the school's canteen has been good off. So the last topic that I want to show about the Cole Seguro report is school support tutoring. Most of the autonomous communities in Spain have designated part of the budget for school support. And in some cases, it's eaten to each other, or almost all of this fund for action to ensure educational equity have been devoted. For autonomous communities have invested more than 5% of the additional funds, and others have spent nothing. So it's all the information that I want to tell you. The aim of the presentation was also to explain you the advocacy that we have done with the report, and to encourage different organizations and different people to roll up with these topics of advocacy in education over the pandemic, over the COVID time.
Okay, thank you very much, Carlos. That was really interesting, and quite a combination of what are still the problems, what has worked and what hasn't, and what continues. So I think that was interesting to hear from your perspective. So as I said earlier, I have failed at holding our time for the event today. So we have a very reduced time for questions. And being the chair, I really get to select the one question I think we should ask certainly our speakers today. And many people on the Q&A and in the chat have asked about how they can be involved, how they can learn more about the ICAM project itself, and how can they get ICAM in their schools. And this is not just from the presentations from Romania, where we have a very large number of teachers who are joined us today, but also from across the EU. So I was wondering who would like to answer that question. Oral, would you like to take that question?
Why not? Thank you, Ali. Definitely, as I said before, we just finished the training of the 20 national facilitators that will have established their schools for the next steps. So basically, at that moment, we can accept different schools. We don't have a list yet, but we intend to work only with schools that accept the program, that are devoted to implement it and to follow it until the end of the project, at least. So yes, you can take contact with me, and we can discuss about that.
Thank you. That was a. Oh, sorry, Chris, do you want to go?
Can I add a comment to that too? I mean, I think it's very clear you can't make schools do this kind of thing, but universally they want to. There's a huge demand and recognition of this issue across Europe. And it's simply a matter now, we need to find ways, and this is where the European Parliament can take action, to help the implementation and operation of these programs. The ICAM program has a structure to it which trains national facilitators. Those national facilitators train school leaders, and school leadership for this development is fundamental. And once those school leaders are trained, they then have access to a range of resources and also to a network which allows them to share what they're doing. Now, who are these school leaders that can be effective? Well, look at Antonio. Look at what he's just shown us that he's doing. Antonio knows the problem. He understands these children. He's got the solutions. He's got ways of doing. What we need to do is to bring people like Antonio to the fore, to give them the opportunity to share what they do and to lead others in doing it, and to explain it clearly and accurately to them. And that is what our program tries to do. When we train national facilitators, people like Antonio can find ways in which they can then share what they do effectively with other people. Now, for that, you need a really effective training methodology, and that we have. And all programs need that, because otherwise, child rights, anything like that will not work. You've got to have effective ways of sharing experience, and it's out there. There are teachers like Antonio in every school working their socks off to work with these children. They know how to do it. We've just got to help them share what they do with each other, and through that routine, and give them a structure to it in a program like the ICAM program or whatever it may be, to help them share with other people, and then we'll be effective. And if the child rights guarantee is going to work, the child guarantee is going to work, that must be at its foundation. You've got to bring forward people like Antonio and the many others around them in order to implement it in these settings and in schools, and particularly at the moment in these circumstances. It's already happening. People are out there doing the work. They just need the support and the linking and the connections.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris. And you've really summed up quite a lot of the need really for as you say, teachers like Antonio. And Antonio, it sounds like you're going to be called again to provide us with further evidence and examples of your practice. So thank you again to everyone. So lots of questions have already been answered directly on the Q&A and some in the chat. But if you do have any further questions and there's been any questions that we've not been able to answer, then the team will be collating and asking the speakers to respond, and we will share the information back to you. So basically today, we looked at the question, are schools in Europe fit for purpose? And given the high interest in this discussion, it's evidence that there is a recognition of the need for all of us, politicians, policymakers, practitioners, and civil society alike, to come together and reform our education systems. And today we have discussed solutions to address and start to reform education systems across Europe. And we've been provided with evidence, we've provided with examples of what works and why we are also doing it. As Chris said, programs like the ICAM program are examples of what has been shown to help children, but they're not the only ones. The EU is prioritizing school success and catalyzing investment in early child education and care, and schools through the Child Guarantee and the European Education Area. And we at EuroChild will continue to campaign to ensure that these initiatives put children's needs and rights at the forefront. And this event is on the 18th of November, and as you know, on the 20th of November is World Children's Day. And I think today we've demonstrated that there's a wide range of professionals that are very ready and willing and able to uphold the rights of children. And I thank you all for being here today. And please enjoy the rest of your day. And thank you again. We will see you again in the future. Thank you.